Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, considering
It's a big day.
tomorrow's the big day.
Well, it's Election Eve. Election Eve is a big day. We're on the eve of a possibly
and
momentous, even transformational election.
People are waiting to see, who kausfiles is going to endorse. Not realizing,
Yeah, I know I'm on the edge of my seat.
not realizing that I endorsed somebody on Bloggingheads months ago.
Yeah, that's what I tell people when they ask. I'm pretty sure you said you'd vote for Obama.
The message still doesn't seem to have sunk in, but
Well, you do such a good job of camouflaging it on your blog with all that, right-wing propaganda. It is kind of disorienting.
you don't know the right-wing propaganda I've resisted, Bob.
Oh, really? So this is just the tip of the iceberg of your dark unconscious mind?
Well, do you want to know that the dance troupe that performed at the Obama Khalidi dinner also allegedly performed some performances where they reenacted the beheading of people representing Americans?
Book him. Book him. If he was at a place where some dancers had been at a place where something happened, the man is not qualified to be president.
Well, anyway, see, I didn't post that.
Wow. That shows remarkable self-restraint because it's so directly germane to the question of who should be our next president.
It's actually not totally ungermane.
Oh, Mickey, you're hopeless, man. You are hopeless.
No, I mean-
hopeless.
I mean-
Was Obama in charge of recruiting the dancers? Did you
Right.
nail that one down?
But, he was at a dinner where people who were in charge of recruiting the dancers recruited some dancers.
Mickey, are you on drugs, man?
No, it's like people were making fun of this. People were saying we don't want this guy to be on the federal courts because he once had lunch with Ann Coulter, and I don't want somebody. I don't want somebody on the federal courts who had lunch with Ann Coulter. I think
That's because you're jealous of them, though.
no. I think that's a little data point in the direction that maybe there'll be right wing judicial activists. So
I think you're nuts. I've had lunch with everybody. I slept under the same roof as Bernadine Dorn.
you did.
Yeah, I submitted. They can watch my last dialogue for this anecdote if they want. Not in the same room, okay? Not in the same room. In the same house at the same time.
Anyway, I'm worried about card check, as you know. That's the one thing. The one place where my support of Obama does seem to have a negative consequence.
Yeah, I guess. Is that your only one, though, honestly? Is that the only thing you worry about a filibuster-proof, not that we'll have one.
That's
but
the biggest one. It's going to be the top fast priority of labor, and Obama seems to be a person who does what big labor wants, usually, and with a filibuster-proof majority, it could sail through. I guess the only thing I've been able to come up with, and I have to write this later today, is that card check can be repealed. Letting in another 20 million immigrants can't be repealed. So,
But on immigration, neither candidate. There's not a big distinction there, is there?
well, there is. I'm with Mark Krikorian that McCain is much more likely to pass immigration reform because it's his only point of connection with the looming congressional supermajority of the Democrats. Whereas Obama pretty clearly has at least announced it's on the back burner. I mean, he's given his 5 priorities, and it's not among them. Of course, card check isn't either, and we know that'll be on the front burner. So,
Although on your blog you did trash Obama for not being sufficiently anti-immigration very recently. This is one of the things that camouflages what you say is your support for Obama.
Anti-immigration or anti-illegal immigration, Bob?
Well, I guess mainly illegal, but actually your argument would apply to either because you were saying he was denying that there actually is competition for low-wage jobs that adversely affects blacks. You said this isn't the language of a politician who wants to transcend partisan difference. Although I would say it is the language of a politician who wants to transcend ethnic difference. What he was doing was arguing against scapegoating, as he put it.
When did I write that? That was not recent.
It wasn't?
No.
Well, you wrote it.
If you say so. If you say so.
That reminds me. Look, can I just punctuate this with... Go ahead.
It's weird that the Democrats run to combat wage stagnation, especially at the bottom, and one of their top priorities is bringing in people who will further lower wages at the bottom. I claim that's perverse. Anyway, sorry.
Well, many Republicans would too. I mean, that's an issue that hasn't found its partisan home yet.
The brutal honesty, I think the problem is, I think immigration reform could be stopped even if McCain is elected. Okay, because it's an issue. Congressmen are chicken, and it's an issue they don't want to stick their necks out on. Card check, on the other hand, probably may not be able to be stopped if Obama is president, and it would definitely be stopped if McCain was president. So if the only issues in the world were card check and immigration, I would be hard pressed to make the case for Obama. But they're not.
Then what are the issues that are swaying you in Obama's direction?
No, I'm just saying that I'm having a hard time making the argument. Obviously, there are other issues like the rebranding of America in the world that are more important.
Well, you must have found some of them persuasive if you are, in fact, supporting Obama.
That's correct.
Well, which ones did you find persuasive?
The rebranding of America in the world, moving ahead on health care and not enacting immigration reform. Plus, I agree with everybody. He seems like a cool hand in a crisis, and his economic advisors inspire confidence.
Okay. So you're for Obama. Ending the suspense that many people.
I'm just working through this item I have to write today, trying to explain why I'm for Obama, for people who don't.
Yeah, well, an argument that won't be available to you is that a vote for Obama is a vote against the McCarthyism that has characterized the McCain campaign, because you're not really down on the tactics of the McCain campaign, right? I mean, I just think this is the worst, in that regard, the worst presidential campaign I'm aware of. But it doesn't bother you.
It's been ineffective because it doesn't seem to have a principled core, and it's all over the lot, and you got a really uncomfortable, queasy feeling about McCain as a person. He seems erratic, and you look at the guy who ran this campaign is not a guy you want in the White House. But
no.
Do I think he's descended to new lows of campaign scurrilousness? No, he hasn't even. He's even abjured bringing up Reverend Wright, which is a totally legitimate issue.
Well, I mean, if I define McCarthyism as the dishonest depiction of an opponent as an enemy of the state, particularly using the tool of guilt by association, could you think of a presidential candidate ever that you're aware of who has done more of it than John McCain has done?
I probably could. I can't right now.
Yeah? Well, it's funny. Last time when I said that her palling around with terrorists, that whole line of argument was one of the most despicable things. One of the most despicable things in the history of American campaign politics. You on your blog triumphantly linked to a Bloggingheads commenter who cited several other instances and made my point because the examples spanned like more than a century and there were only 3 of them. Okay, so yeah.
Well, didn't Richard Nixon make a career of red baiting? I think he did.
But he wasn't a presidential candidate when he was doing it. And by the way, the McCainites are doing it in such a literal fashion. I mean, first of all, they've moved from terrorist to socialist, which was the McCarthyite charge, And secondly, did you see Michael Goldfarb? Did you see this little thing where he couldn't name somebody besides Rashid Khalidi who, in his view, was anti-Semitic? After saying Obama has a history of surrounding him being near anti-Semitic rhetoric. Did you see that clip?
I read about it. I'm with you on charges of anti-Semitism. That was ridiculous. On the other hand...
Well, also, can I just finish the thought? It was directly analogous to McCarthy, Joe McCarthy, standing there saying, I have in my list 53 or 51 names of communists in the government, and it turns out, where are the names? It was just a bluff, and Goldfarb seems to have been bluffing. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they're desperate.
That's no excuse, especially for a guy like McCain.
I'm just saying they're desperate.
But McCain has said that his most cherished value is honor, and he has lost it. Win or lose, and he could win conceivably, but he's lost his honor.
Those of us who followed him in the immigration debate realize he never had it. He lied about immigration all the time. The scale.
Well,
I'm not shocked that McCain would lie. He's a Darwinian creature like everybody else.
Certain kinds of dishonesty are inherent in being a politician, I think, but McCarthyism is not. That's a choice. Now, I don't,
he's run a crude, bad, and negative campaign, but this idea that is like unprecedented McCarthyism seems strange. I mean, we never had a candidate with Obama's background. I mean, it's given the sort of given those circumstances, that's why McCarthyism is rarely used in a presidential campaign, because usually by the time the candidate gets to run for president, they're sort of immune to those charges. Obama's come from nowhere with a unusual third world background, and if you're a political cheap shot artist like Schmidt, you're going to take those cheap shots.
You could always invent something, but the fact is, in terms of valid connections to terrorists, truly worrisome connections to terrorists, there just aren't any.
It means something if he has dinner with Edward Said and Khalidi. I don't think it disqualifies him.
Doesn't mean he's a terrorist.
No, it doesn't mean he's a terrorist, but it means something. And it means something that would probably...
What does it mean? What does it mean?
It means he's friendlier to PLO types than maybe other people.
Oh, look, the PLOs now are buddies.
I understand.
First of all.
It doesn't bother me, but I'm saying...
And I don't think either of those guys has endorsed the tactic of Hamas, which is killing civilians.
I'm saying it's not... you haven't seen my inbox, but I'm saying it's not meaningless. Guilt by association...
No, it's not nothing, but playing the anti-Semitism card is, on the basis of that kind of evidence, it seems to me, is trying to short-circuit rational thought, which is what the McCain campaign is all about.
I mean, we make decisions on the basis of guilt by association in our lives all the time. I mean, it's not completely irrational. It can, it can become demagogic. It's applied to me all the time in ways that I find demagogic. But it's not like it's irrelevant who has lunch with Ann Coulter.
Sure ain't.
Anyway, made my point.
Not to mention dinner. I mean, that for me is the real...
Dinner's okay. Lunch is the problem.
Yeah. So, anyway, is there at this point, how big is the chance that McCain could win? We should say that we're taping this mid-afternoon, election eve. The polls do not look good for John McCain. On the other hand, I noticed on your blog... said fairly recently it's not over yet, and that's my feeling, partly on grounds of superstition. I'm like that.
If you live through New Hampshire, you're never going to proclaim Obama a victor.
Well, look, if you lived through the Kerry election 4 years ago, but certainly New Hampshire is very relevant because once again the polls show Obama ahead. Last time that happened, we know what happened.
Interesting. You bring up Kerry. I have a point about him that I definitely want to make later, but we have these two phenomena. We have this two electorates theory, which says that in the current media environment, people who are uninformed are really uninformed in a way they didn't used to be. I mean, they used to at least listen to Walter Cronkite for 5 minutes. Now they don't even get that, and that they inform themselves at the last minute.
How do we know that? What's
Well, you could just see it happening. You could see it in New Hampshire, for example. People, Hillary cries the day before, and all of a sudden she wins the race because that's the last thing people saw, and there were huge numbers of undecideds.
Now, I think fairly well-informed people can be swayed by their view of the candidate's character and psychology very easily. That doesn't mean they don't know anything about the fact that they suddenly became sympathetic toward her doesn't mean they didn't know anything about the issues going in.
No, but it meant that there were large numbers of undecided, which I think the polls showed. And there's no way to prove this. I mean, the classic example, Jerry Skurnick is the guy, he's a blogger and a political consultant who came up with this theory, was Giuliani. I mean, everybody in New York knew that Giuliani had this, been unfaithful to his wife and had this third wife. voters sort of didn't find out about that until the last minute. And then all of a sudden, Giuliani went from being the front runner to being in the dumps.
Well, I hope you're right that it's only uninformed voters who are swayed by this kind of stuff, because I was disturbed to see McCain rehabilitated on Saturday Night Live Saturday night, and I consoled myself by saying, well, everybody who watches Saturday Night Live has already decided how they're going to vote, and it's mostly Obama.
You think he was?
Did you see that? Did you see this skit?
Yeah, I didn't think he was rehabilitated. I thought it was. I mean,
he came off as like. I mean, I think he had depicted himself as just this kind of dark, nasty character, and I now think that that's largely accurate in the debates and through the kind of campaign he's running. And all of a sudden, he seemed likable. And I thought what was especially effective was the way Cindy humanized herself. You've got someone who seems robotic, humanizing themselves by depicting themselves as robotic and laughing at it, right?
But it also basically made it seem like the race was over and he was doomed. Which
well, I thought there was
good.
kind of that air about of it that we're already beginning the reconciliation process.
The reconciliation will take 10 seconds. All the people who were turning.
I
against
hope not.
The people who were turning against McCain. 3/4 of them are just turning him against McCain because he stands in the way of Obama being president. Once Obama's president, they'll resume the love fest with McCain instantly. How long do you think Joe Klein is going to carry his grudge against McCain? I would say 50 seconds.
Well, if McCain loses, yes. I think if McCain wins, there will be grudges galore because of the kind of campaign he ran.
No, but I'm assuming McCain will lose.
But this is.
Go ahead.
But on the other hand, aren't you prepared to argue that the media is going to turn on Obama if he's elected? I guess those are one and the same. Those are one and the same argument.
I think the media will turn on Obama, because they feel slightly soiled by the charge that they were in the tank, and they want to prove their manhood and independence. That would be the main factor. And look at what happened to Deval Patrick in Massachusetts. He had a horrible first year. He ran on a very similar platform. And B, the media know a lot about Obama, and they're in a position to be very, very critical, and they feel that, unlike Republicans, who are these sort of alien beings who they sort of have to give the benefit of the doubt to because, God, they have the people in the heartland like them, we don't quite understand why. Obama, they feel they know, and they can, and they do know, and they're armed. They're armed for bear. If he appoints, I don't know. He's supposedly going to appoint John Kerry as Secretary of State, which is profoundly depressing. But
is Rahm Emanuel still leading the race for Chief of Staff?
I don't know. Supposedly he'd been asked, but I don't.
Why would he take it in a heartbeat?
Why would he take it? He's a congressman.
Because it's a very powerful position. You're controlling the information flow to the president. I'd take that job. I'm available. Let's spread that rumor.
But, that's a good point. One doesn't want Rahm Emanuel in the job.
No, one doesn't want Rahm Emanuel to be controlling the flow of information.
He's a really manipulative guy. I mean, I have tremendous respect for him, and he's succeeded in getting a Democratic congressional majority when I didn't quite think it was possible. And he's funny and smart and et cetera, but he's very manipulative.
The other thing is, he was a Hillary supporter. I mean, doesn't Obama want to lay down reinforce the idea that loyalty matters a little with him?
I thought he straddled.
No, I believe he was officially. So. I remember the moment he turned when there was like a 1% chance of Hillary winning. I don't think he had straddled until then. I think he was on board with her.
But anyway.
So we're against that.
Here's my point about Kerry. The Democrats are so lucky that Kerry lost in 2004. If Kerry had won, two things would have happened. He would have lost the Iraq War, and the economy still would have gone into the tank, and we'd be looking at an election where a Democrat has seemingly lost a war, even though he didn't start the war, and where there are dire economic circumstances. There's no way he would have been reelected. We'd be talking about a massive Republican shift now.
Okay, now this.
So that's
go ahead.
That's the idea I had in the 5 minutes.
You may be right. Now I maintain that little discussion of Kerry can lead us back to the path that we were on several tangents ago about whether the media will befriend Obama or not if he's elected.
I also think, cycles move faster these days. I don't think you get a 6-month honeymoon anymore.
No, but I do think, and this is the Kerry connection. You were talking about the economy. One thing I wonder. Well, first of all, let me say, I agree that Obama could lose the support of the press very promptly, and partly because I think I disagree with something you said earlier. You said the people who were opposed to McCain, it was not that they don't like McCain, it's just that they're pro-Obama. In the case of the media, I don't think that's the case. I don't think Obama has a lot of staunch friends among the media. He doesn't cultivate the media in a way that he would be capable of doing. For mysterious reasons, he doesn't choose to use his charm on the media. I don't think he has a lot of big friends. I think the media turned against McCain and against Palin, beginning when Palin declared war on them at the convention, and then when it became evident that McCain was running just a really cheesily dishonest campaign. I think the lipstick on a pig moment was a big one, where the media just started deciding it was their job to hold McCain accountable for the nonsense that was coming out of his campaign. So anyway, I don't think they are really on board for Obama right now.
You're saying that Obama has not cultivated them. I think that's right, and they sort of resent his press operation even. But I think the main reason they're for Obama is because they're Democrats. They want Obama to win, and they're willing to put their personal annoyance with him because his campaign plane smells aside in order to elect, because their natural sympathies are with the Democrat. And
wait! You buried your lead here. Does Obama's campaign plane smell?
There was an article a few weeks ago by a disgruntled reporter about how Obama has terrible relations with the press. This will all come out after the election. We hate his operation. His plane smells. Yes.
What's the smell?
I assume it smells like a plane that's been sat in by hundreds of people 24 hours a day.
Okay.
JetBlue. It smells like JetBlue.
Okay.
If you've ever flown JetBlue, you know the smell.
I've flown JetBlue.
Okay.
So we kind of agree that he may not have a long honeymoon.
You know what? It depends what he does. I mean, if he appoints, if his first move is card check and gays in the military, he might be in for a few bad weeks.
I've got to think his priority is going to be health care, right?
He said his priority is going to be energy, which is shocking. Healthcare was number 3. I think that's crazy too. I think healthcare should be his top priority. But
because energy is so amorphous. I mean, when is mission accomplished? With healthcare, there's one bill you want to pass, and when you pass it, you've won. And if presuming that the economic downturn continues, it's exactly the kind of thing that would make a number of people rest easier.
Henry Aaron Brookings wrote an article on why healthcare should not be a top priority. Which I disagree. I disagree too. But
he's a great baseball player. I just disagree.
But I forget his argument. I think the argument is that there's no democratic consensus, but it seems to me that there are certainly concrete, incremental things you can do with children and et cetera, that would be good steps in the right direction. And I've never quite understood why the Clinton strategy of just lowering the Medicare age gradually isn't also a good incremental strategy. But
yeah, well,
anyway,
I think it's going to be an environment that compels him to do something on the economic front promptly that has tangible effect, and I'd rather it be healthcare than a tax giveaway. Can I say one more thing about that? One thing I'm wondering whether one thing that could keep the press on his side is, if this economic crisis gets grave enough. One thing I don't know, but does that put the country on something of a wartime psychological footing? In other words, this is really a crisis. We have to rally around our leader. I don't know the history of FDR's popular support during the Depression, but
I think
that could conceivably help. I think, but I think it'll only be sustainable, that kind of help, if he does start showing tangible legislative results.
I think the Blue Eagle was quite popular, wasn't it? For a while.
What was the Blue Eagle?
The NRA?
Oh, the NRA.
National Recovery Administration.
I think.
Yes, I would.
So
I would
think
think he might get some of that war footing. Plus, the Republican Party is in shambles. I don't think they're in much of a position to offer opposition.
Okay, speaking of the Republican Party, unless you have something else to say about that. We wanted to run through 2 scenarios. One, if Obama wins, and we've done a little of that, but The other, and one if he loses, we haven't done any of that. But one subsection of the what if he wins scenario is what happens to the Republican Party. Do you have a theory about what kind of Republican Party emerges? Paul Krugman had a column today saying that what will be left of the Republican Party is basically, I don't think he used the word, but basically idiots. I mean, in other words...
He said it was going to be a rump of intolerance and bigotry.
Yeah.
That's sort of the... what you would expect a liberal columnist to say. I sort of have always thought the Republican Party was doomed ever since welfare reform. I mean, I think that was their one issue that, the Democrats want to spend all this money, but they don't want to spend it in consistent with our values of work. And once it was established that the Democrats did want to spend it consistent with the values of work, people are quite happy to have big government spending money on Social Security and the Earned Income Tax Credit and all sorts of work-related expenses. Even some Republicans are happy. So the Republicans, as party of limited government, sort of went out the window and became a minority party at that point.
Okay.
And it just taken forever for the Gingrichites to lose power, but they finally done it. That's sort of my view.
So even granted that they're doomed, they will have some sort of ideological identity, right? I mean, even if they're doomed to lose the next 35 elections, there will be a Republican Party 4 years from now, and questions arise such as, will it be highly populist economically? Will it be anti-immigration? I mean, it seems to me the kind of campaign McCain and Palin are running is the kind that is congenial to anti-immigration types, right? Because there's a lot of xenophobia, and they're cultivating a fear of the other. It's very nationalistic. So I would expect it to become a natural home for, some people who you might not totally disapprove of. I don't mean bigots, but I mean people who are skeptical of illegal immigration. People who are very much against illegal immigration.
There's nowhere near a majority of those people. It seems to me that just thinking about it out loud, you want a Republican who, since big government is here to stay, you need a Republican who is at home with big government. He can be skeptical of bureaucratic, expansionism. He can be skeptical of high taxes, but he can't oppose the core of democratic liberal government because we're back in the 50s. That's here to stay. We're in the Eisenhower era. But he can have interesting libertarian leanings like Schwarzenegger. He can. I don't think.
See, but that's the question.
I think
for me.
We're back to Me Too politics.
That's the question for me. If it's libertarian, then it can't be economically populist, right?
Well, sure it can. Schwarzenegger was fairly populist.
Well, if you're going to have a libertarian economic philosophy, is that, or do you just mean a libertarian on the social issues?
No, you can have a little bit of George Wallace. The pointy-headed bureaucrats in Washington are trying to tell you what to do. I trust you to decide for yourself what to do. You could see that on education, for example. Maybe choice. Yeah. Choice. You could be anti-bureaucratic. That would work.
But you can't have economically populist policies like redistribution and spreading the wealth if you're gonna have the economic libertarians. Because
sure.
Well, go ahead.
I guess that's right. I mean, defending economic freedom against Washington that wants to take your property for eminent domain and wants to tell you how to run your business, and that's populist in a way. It's not redistributive populism. It's not rich versus poor populism. But
because Ross Douthat said something interesting in a Jonah Goldberg dialogue a couple of days ago, that Sarah Palin was one of the few figures who could unite, I think, if I understood him correctly, the religious right with the talk radio right. And I think talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, does involve economic libertarianism, right?
I think. What do I know?
So he's saying she could kind of square that circle, but I don't know. Meanwhile, in real life, tons of libertarians have deserted the Republican Party over Sarah Palin. That's the thing. Half of it has been over Sarah Palin because she's not. She can't. That's the other thing is, on social issues, she can't represent libertarianism. She's the one who tried to get tolerance of gay people out of the library.
Where does I can't believe that libertarians are motivated overwhelmingly by gay rights issues. Seems to me economic issues are much more important.
They are, most libertarians, even if their emphasis is on economic libertarianism, I think they're creeped out by, I've heard a couple of things. One is intolerance. Lifestyle intolerance does bother a lot of libertarians who are primarily economic libertarians, I think. Partly because if you call yourself a libertarian, you're really averse to government meddling, most of them. Secondly, she has shown what are interpreted by some as authoritarian tendencies. But she becomes the mayor, fires a police chief because he won't do her business. She becomes governor, fires the head of the state-level police force because he won't do personal, won't service her family, And that creeps libertarians out. She has the governing style of an authoritarian.
What? I would rather have somebody who fires people than somebody who is cemented in place by civil service bureaucrats who we won't fire.
Well, unless it's the police chief you keep firing, and unless on your agenda is removing books from the library that advocate tolerance of gay people.
I don't think huge world historic issues were on her agenda.
No, but it's a microcosm for the way she would govern.
If you saw the interview with the current mayor whistle about what goes on in her day, it's not the Bretton Woods conference.
No, but it's insight into Sarah Palin's governing style, and it's not something. Look, Mickey, what's your explanation for why so many libertarians are for Obama?
Because Obama, I don't know, because at some subconscious level they think Obama is better for the country. They're disgusted with Bush, and they want to go with the winner.
Now, these are not people who are kind of confusedly conflating McCain with Bush, Mickey. These are like, they are evaluating McCain and Palin. And I don't think there's really a whole lot in McCain's history to alienate a libertarian.
Well,
there are his...
Campaign,
you're right. There's his nationalism and
drives them crazy. And
his what?
Campaign finance reform drives them crazy, and rightly so. Yeah. I see Palin as a pragmatic figure. I think she's a very talented politician who will do what is necessary to do to advance Sarah Palin. So if that involves libertarianism, she'll be libertarian. If it involves authoritarianism, she'll be authoritarian. That is her virtue, is precisely that she's a potential chameleon, but yet an appealing person who seems sort of grounded. On the stump, she can be brilliant and she can be incredibly awful. She's just totally erratic as far as I can see.
Have you changed your view that she's, quote, incredibly articulate?
Yes, I think sometimes she's incredibly articulate and sometimes she's awful.
I don't think she's ever incredibly articulate. I think sometimes she's intelligible.
Articulate in in that she's charming and she has great theatrical
she has a little charisma.
Sensibilities.
She has a little charisma, but as whether she's comfortingly chameleon-esque, I do think her religious faith is serious. I do think if she becomes president, she will think God wanted her to become president. And I think we've seen one case where that happened. George Bush, and as pragmatic as he may have been in getting to be president, when he became president and decided there was something God wanted him to do, like invade Iraq, he did it.
Well,
and that was not a political... You would not have done that on the basis of political calculation, invade Iraq, I don't think.
One thing that is downplayed in all the talk of the Republican crack-up is the extent to which it is just a result of an idiosyncratic president who started a disastrous war, which then in his second term he went around and won. But it was still pretty much disastrous, certainly disastrous for the Republican Party, and it was just the action of one guy. You can't lay it at the feet of the entire Republican ideology.
Notice that I'm carefully not being provoked by your characterization of this war as us having won it.
Well, looks a lot better than it did in 2004, doesn't it?
Well, that's true. There are differing magnitudes of defeat. But anyway, we've had that argument.
No, let's have it again. What's your...
No, my point was just, in a war of choice, my definition of winning is if your strategic position is better after the war than it was before. I think our national security is weaker after the war as a result of it than it was before. That's my whole argument, and there's no point in,
No, lay it out, because assuming
we've done that.
If we have a stable democracy in Iraq, why isn't that in the long term a pretty good thing for us in terms of our geopolitical position in the world? I mean,
we're a long way from having that, first of all. Secondly, notice what's happening in Afghanistan. A much graver threat to our security than Iraq ever was is what's going on in the Afghanistan-Pakistan nexus, and I do think arguably that's because we were distracted and it drained resources and so on. Certainly we know that tactics that were perfected in Iraq, such as suicide bombing and IEDs and so on, were then transplanted into Afghanistan, which before that had never seen suicide bombing, I think.
And the threat is that we're going to get a radical Islamic State with the bomb. That would be
unfortunate.
That would be
a lot more unfortunate
than
anything Saddam Hussein was going to bring our way.
Because I don't see a lot of threat that people in the Tora Bora region are going to be launching, ever more effective terrorist attacks against us unless they do have the bomb.
Well, but the cost of our heading that off so far, I think, if you look at the way we've forestalled that, which is with a growing number of trans-border raids, I think that's, if you look at the effect that's having on popular sentiment in some areas, that's probably not serving our interests in the long run. But more than that, yes, any significant threat of our enemies really taking over a state with nuclear weapons is very bad. B, Afghanistan's just looking like a quagmire that could unleash all kinds of monsters in the long run. And my list goes on so long. I mean, I think the distraction caused by Iraq is one reason we neglected this warning signs for the economic crisis. It just drains your attention to have a war going on.
In part, our difference is semantic. It seems to me you can win a war and still be in a worse strategic position at the end of it.
If you are invaded, yes, I agree that that's the criterion. But if it's a war of choice and you invade, I think the true test is, did you improve your national security or not? It was a failure if you did not.
Well, like I say, that's just a semantic difference. It seems to me you win the war if your guys are in power and there's peace in the country, and you can still be in a worse situation than before. Anyway.
Okay. So semantics separate us, sadly. It's tragic almost. But but back to this campaign. Wait, did we say we were going to talk about what if McCain wins? First of all, I'm really not ruling that out. I think the polls. I think the polls will be shown to be off significantly one way or the other in a lot of cases, because I think this is a more uncertain polling environment than ever. Cell phones and so on.
The cell phones will break Obama's way,
But I think the polls try to correct for the cell phone effect, and they could be overcorrecting, I think.
There's just total unanimity among the polls. That's the thing that leads one to think that they can't all be wrong.
No, there is a little tightening in some swing states as he's gotten dirtier and dirtier. In Pennsylvania, for example, has been a little tightening.
The Democrats all say, well, the early voting is breaking for Obama 51-43. Well, but given the incredible enthusiasm for Obama, you would think that his voters would disproportionately be early voters, which would suggest that the election day voting won't be anywhere near that.
Right. In fact,
go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I predict that on election night, you're going to see whoever wins. As the results roll in, you're going to see what looks like McCain momentum, because presumably in the states with early voting, you'll show they'll quickly calculate the early votes. Obama will be ahead, and then the remaining voters will be relatively favorable toward McCain. And also, I think more generally, early voters are people who would have voted the same way on election day. So the idea that Obama is locking in some vote that might be different on Election Day is, I think, wrong. I think these are by and large highly motivated people who know exactly who they're going to vote for, and if they didn't vote early, they'd vote on Election Day.
I thought the pro-Obama argument is that they're people who tend not to vote on Election Day, but the Obama machine is so powerful it goes out and gets them to vote early, and therefore it gets votes it would ordinarily not get if there was no voting.
That could be. It's certainly the case that in terms of who's going to win, one ace in the hole Obama has, any like Bradley effect notwithstanding, is supposedly he does have an extremely strong ground game in terms of getting people to the polls. And I guess early voting, one thing it does is it neutralizes the effect of bad weather on Election Day at a minimum. So even if his ground game is so strong that he would have gotten everybody out on Election Day, I agree that it's with whatever you say.
It just seems to me, I mean, it's almost unthinkable that people would vote for McCain. It's like, not since the King campaign, I think that was the guy in Massachusetts who just threw the kitchen sink at his opponent and got elected governor. I think his opponent was Dukakis. Has there been have you gotten such an unpleasant feeling about a presidential candidate? It's hard for me to see. I guess Harry Truman maybe was the same way, but
but he didn't run nearly so low a campaign.
But he was sort of a kitchen sink, putting together 50 different interest groups.
But what has creeped out so many elites is not just the, shall we say, eclecticism of the campaign, but how just underhanded it's been and how desperate it is. I mean, here's an example. Is he had sworn he wouldn't. McCain had said we're not going to use the Reverend Wright issue. Well, lo and behold, these Reverend Wright ads start showing up in Pennsylvania. And McCain advisor Charlie Black said his candidate, I'm reading from some press dispatch, would have preferred that the Pennsylvania GOP not air the ad using Wright's controversial anti-American statements. But, quote, as McCain said back in the spring, we can't be the referee of every ad. Right. I'm sure if McCain called the Republican Party in Pennsylvania, they wouldn't even return the call, right? No.
But there's no way to stop those ads from coming out. And they probably
could stop the party from running. He could stop the state party. McCain could stop the state party.
He has damaged himself tremendously by not bringing up Reverend Wright. There's no reason why he shouldn't bring up Reverend Wright. And it's a typical perverse, stubborn McCain eccentricity that he ruled it out. It was crazy. Why rule it out?
I don't know, but those last minute robocalls and so on. If you want some evidence that they're working in Pennsylvania, my wife and younger daughter did some canvassing for Obama there.
Right.
And they're supposed to just wind up at pro-Obama houses, that's the plan. But occasionally wires get crossed, and so an address they've been given turns out to have a McCain supporter, and so there were about 4 of those. And one of them, this woman points to the Obama sticker on my daughter and says, "That man is evil," and starts going off about Ayers and so on. So
that's not a promising prospect.
No, not for America after the election. That is the biggest crime McCain has committed here, is embittered people, if Obama wins, embittered people against America's president. I mean, that's not country first, folks.
Won't they come around fairly quickly? I mean, people thought, there are a lot of people...
I don't think this lady's changing her mind, no.
A lot of people,
doesn't sound like it.
A lot of people thought that Kennedy was going to be, a papist.
He was not depicted as an enemy of the state.
I'm sure there were anti-communists who pointed out he was surrounded by questionable people.
I think he out Cold War Nixon in that.
Well, that was compensating, and Obama is, he's telling people to pull up their pants and not show their underwear.
Yeah,
I love that.
Well,
that was great.
Did he say that?
Yes, he said many people don't want to see your underwear, and I'm one of them.
He's telling his supporters he does what? This is like what is he? Who's he talking to? Guys wearing hip hop clothes?
They asked him about all these laws that are being passed saying that people can't wear low-riding pants.
Oh,
and he said the laws are silly, but people should pull up their pants. Exactly the right answer.
Not quite a Sister Soldier moment, but in that direction. Wait, we were also gonna. Okay, so. We think there is at least some chance that McCain will win.
I can't even get my head around what the incredible nervous breakdown that would happen among my friends.
Okay, that's it. What would happen if McCain wins? Would there be riots?
Well,
I mean, he would probably lose the popular vote, right? And yet win, and so...
No, I think he'd win the popular vote. He would... I don't think there'd be riots.
I think there's no way he wins the popular vote, frankly, but...
No way Obama wins the popular vote?
No way McCain wins it. I'm saying if McCain wins the presidency, he would probably do it in spite of losing the popular.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
yes,
so we agree. So people will feel disenfranchised, especially blacks have been waiting for this moment forever.
Do you think... I think blacks tend to feel that they thought this moment would never come, and it's unbelievable that it's come, and I don't think they feel...
away at the last minute.
They don't feel pent-up, demand. It's something they thought would never happen until the end of time. So I'm just not sure that there would be riots.
No, I'm not. I doubt there would be significant.
The Clintons would have a huge claim to say, "We told you so," and so they're immediately going to be hated because the guy who was right and comes back and says, "I told you so," is always the first guy to get the axe. Nobody likes that person. So Hillary and Bill would be, I think, big losers in this, actually. It's like Chester Bowles saying, Chester Bowles, who was right about Vietnam, was the most hated man in the Johnson administration because he had been right. So Clinton, who thought Obama could never win, would have been proven right, and so he'll be despised.
Yeah, first of all, it will be the effective end of public opinion polling, I think. If McCain, who will again pay any attention to those polls? Unless they refine their methodology.
The rational reaction would be get rid of the Iowa caucus. In fact, get rid of all caucuses, because if there had been primaries, Obama probably wouldn't have won. Don't nominate a strange person without a track record who has fuzzy left-wing connections, unless he's proven that he's not going to govern, in consonance with that. Those would be the obvious things, and I suppose the country is not ready for a black president, is what.
Well, that would be a moral that's drawn, certainly.
It would be accurate. Can you imagine because of his unknown qualities, one can't imagine a black candidate who would be more acceptable than Obama, but there are not many of them around. There's a whole...
No, he was... Yeah,
he seems right for the part. There's a whole crop of them growing up in the cities. There's Cory Booker, there's Mayor Fenty, there's Mayor Nutter, there's the Speaker of the Colorado House. They're all great politicians with tremendous mainstream appeal, but they're not ready to run for president yet.
Yeah.
So it would be very discouraging, and I don't know. I would come up with some "I told you so" about how he's too far left and too cozy with the unions, but I would just be pursuing my own agenda. Basically, Clinton would have been right.
I guess, yeah. I don't think the unions would be the key thing. I think it would be the combination, the way his connections are being depicted by McCain in working in synergy with his race. But and then what kind of McCain? What would be the deal with McCain? I think he'd face a pretty hostile Congress.
He actually might be somewhat effective. He'd be perfectly willing to cut deals with the Democrats and run a relatively liberal, more liberal than Gerald Ford type administration. They'd immediately enact immigration reform.
Well, that's just your fear. That's the reptilian core of Mickey's brain speaking fearfully. But
as you know, I'm dominated by fear, Bob.
It's a living.
No, but that's quite rational. That's the big thing that they agree on.
I think what would be rational is for him to pass some sort of health care thing pretty soon.
Well, but their health care plans, their health care ideologies are completely on opposite ends.
He's a flexible man.
And that is the one achievement that Bush, I yield to no man. Well, I yield to a bunch of people in my distaste for the Bush administration. But the one thing he has done that's been undercovered is the Medicare drug benefit, which was designed to show that market mechanisms could be applied to health care and reduce costs, and seems to be working. Even Robert Reichauer concedes, it seems, last time I checked, that it seems to be working, and that's sort of a big argument for the McCain market-oriented view of healthcare, which I tend to disagree with.
Yeah.
But it's not unpopular. It hasn't collapsed. Bureaucrats saved it from disaster, and it's come in within cost projections. I think it's not a runaway entitlement. So what's not to like?
I know nothing about that subject except that I trust Bob Reischauer on it.
Well, he just wrote something about a year ago saying, "Look, we've been whining about the cost projections, but if the cost projections seem to be accurate, what's not to like? We've run out of ammunition against this thing."
As so often, you raise a good question.
But that's the one part of Bush's legacy that I think will be resurrected by somebody.
Well, I will certainly have a sense of relief when this thing is over. I just feel like I've been holding my breath. It's funny because, it's not really that I have a whole lot of confidence in Obama in a certain sense. I mean, I very much like the idea of, well, first of all, a black guy being president. I like that. I like for that to have happened in America. And I like kind of the vibe he gives off. And he has tremendous potential as an orator who could do great things with the power of rhetoric. But I've been so far so disappointed in the things, areas that matter most to me by his campaign rhetoric.
What's so disappointing? See, I have tremendous confidence in him. I have huge hopes. I think he's a smart guy with a good temperament. He's surrounded himself basically with good people. Jason Furman is extremely confidence-inspiring. If anything, he's sort of too cautious in his. If he has Jim Johnson as his vetter, Joe Biden as his vice president, and John Kerry as his Secretary of State, how much more cautious, plotting, and establishment can you be? So starting from that base, you can only get more interesting.
But see,
what has he done that's so disappointing to you?
In the realm of foreign policy, that's exactly what worries me. I think America needs to rethink some fundamentals. You look at Afghanistan. No, in the course of this whole presidential campaign, no one has raised what you have to concede is at least an interesting question, which is, do we really want to escalate that war? Okay? That's a question maybe somebody should ask. You're not going to hear it from Obama, apparently, unless he does an about-face.
Well, he might well. This could be a Kimoy and Matsu sort of campaign strategy. But you know who agrees with you about maybe not escalating in Afghanistan, Bob?
Who, Ann Coulter?
You betcha.
Well, Ann and I, I'll tell you.
I recommend that you have lunch with her.
Well, since we already agree on this issue, I don't see any point in really hashing it out.
The Republicans are going to be against everything Obama is for. So you will have just as there were Republicans who opposed the Kosovo intervention by Clinton, there will be a lot of Republicans who'll say, "Wait, what about Afghanistan? Why do we want to expend our resources there?" Even if
I hope, but similarly, you've heard nothing from Obama about the idea, at least very little. It's probably buried somewhere, but he certainly hasn't emphasized the idea that in the war on terror, hearts and minds matter. I mean, I know everybody purports to believe that, but he's not emphasized that. Oh God, don't get me started. It's just my hobby horse. I had hopes that he might make a really high priority of solving the Palestinian problem at one point, but it looks like he's just going to surround himself with the same establishment figures who have failed to solve the problem forever. And he's going to be so kind of mau-maued. Is that the verb on this issue? Is that the right use of that verb? In other words, he's going to feel he has to work so hard to prove his pro-Israel, in quotes, credentials. I put it in quotes because the supposedly pro-Israel positions tend to be bad for Israel. That I don't see him doing any kind of major and radically new initiative there.
Well, a couple of things. Is Kerry as particularly quote-unquote pro-Israel politician? I'm not sure.
He I don't know. He doesn't hang out with Rashid Khalidi. I don't know.
Haughty wasps tend not to be the most pro-Israel politicians. The other thing is, the one thing that's happened as a result of the Iraq War is you can now attack what you and I call what I call the Likudniks, but what Joe Klein calls Jewish neoconservatives, and attack them for conflating and misperceiving Israel and America's interests, and not be branded effectively an anti-Semite. I mean, Joe Klein is the guy who's gone over the side to see if the other side's machine guns are working, and they're not working. He's attacked Jewish neoconservatives. The commentary types have called on him to be drummed out of the press corps, and that hasn't happened because most people feel that after the Iraq War, arguing that people were too swayed by their misguided sympathies for Israel and misperceiving its and America's self-interest, that's a reasonable charge to make. And you can make that charge now.
I think it's true that there's been a little change in the zeitgeist, and Klein was really a bellwether. I also think it's true that it's more common now for you to mention AIPAC and people to kind of roll their eyes. In other words, there's more agreement that AIPAC is just not necessarily a force for good, whether it thinks it's doing good for Israel or not. It's a kind of a right-wing organization that's fundamentally Likudnik. So all that has kind of changed. But the fact is, Obama, in bending over backwards to please AIPAC, said one of the stupidest and most counterproductive things said in the whole campaign, which is that Jerusalem had to remain divided, which is a far-right position. And if you ask why did he say that, I think one reason is he's not surrounding himself with anybody who has interesting views. It seems like Dennis Ross, the same guy who failed to get the job done for about several decades now, is maybe going to be the lead guy. He fired Rob Malley, who might have had something interesting to say. I just see no signs that Obama's going to... I'd love to be proven wrong.
I think you're...
But I just see Obama as joining the long line of presidents who have helped dig Israel's grave, and in the process not done us any good either.
I think you're putting way too much emphasis on what Obama says during a campaign as opposed to...
Well, I hope.
But you might be right in this particular case, because I don't see him being especially activist. I know too many people who disagree with you about Israel who love Obama.
Well, that is the... I mean, that's also alarming, Marty Peretz is, unlike me, has probably had actual conversations with Obama, and Marty's certainly well to the right of me on Middle Eastern matters, and seems that Obama passed the test with him.
Although he's not... is he on the right of American Jewish lobbying sentiment? I don't think so.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing. I think Marty would at least say that the settlements have been a bad idea.
Well, and he's...
But that's a good example of something you haven't heard Obama utter, whereas it seems obvious.
And he's happy with a two-state solution. Is that?
You mean Marty?
Yes.
Yeah, in principle. I mean, look, everybody says they're for a two-state solution. The question is what kind of demands they would make and what kind of concessions they would grant.
Right. I just don't. Anyway, I think there are people who undermine that more than Marty. But
yeah,
I could be wrong.
You could be wrong.
So this has been.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope Obama on foreign policy. I hope it's all campaign rhetoric, and he's going to do some interesting things. He is good on nuclear nonproliferation, even in his campaign rhetoric.
And of course, that the election is probably not going to end on Tuesday because there's going to be a runoff.
Legal challenge.
Might be a runoff in Georgia that determines whether Democrats get to 60. That looks like the most likely scenario at the moment.
I doubt they'll get to 60.
I don't. It looks like Franken might win in Minnesota, and they definitely get to 57-58. So if Franken wins, then they're at 58-59, and then if Chambliss is in a runoff, that's a big deal. So
if I can do one quick additional example on foreign policy is missile defense. I mean, they asked Obama during the debate, well, look, face it, you guys are going to have to cut some programs. We're shoveling tons of money toward this economic crisis. What are you going to cut? And Obama said, I wouldn't cut missile defense. Well, that's an obvious thing. It should have been cut on any number of grounds a long time ago. And if he's making those kinds of pledges in the campaign, I'm worried.
Huh. I hadn't heard that one.
And he said it in the debate.
Yeah. We both agree that his administration is going to be much more conventional, cautious, and establishment than people hope.
Yeah, which you're saying is good news on domestic policy, and I'm saying is bad news on foreign policy. I do think Obama's got a little realist in him that McCain seems not to have. You saw signs of that in the debate, which is good. I mean, he realizes that you need China and Russia on board for some big important things, and you can't be picking a fight with them over how democratic they are or aren't at every opportunity. I think that's good.
I would say a lot of realists, but anyway.
Hope.
Well, are we through? This has been strangely disjointed, but
It has been.
I'm responsible for that. I apologize.
No. It's really my fault. I insist.
But you had some announcement you wanted to make?
Oh, thank you for that.
Or not?
It's not a big one. It's just that, once again, I've done one of these comments monovlogs. Not necessarily a lot better than the last one, but it will be linked to in the links. Since, again, Mickey, you are not willing to sit still for
That's right.
While I address commenters.
It's weird. Even though this may not have been our best dialogue, but Bloggingheads in general is on a full boil.
Is it?
Well, it looks like there's interesting things on every day, and I think when historians of the future look back on this election, they'll say this was the Bloggingheads election.
You think so? Well, that's a tribute to our entire Bloggingheads team, certainly including Sang, the content generator.
I was exaggerating, but I do think the site looks terrific.
Well, don't say that to Sang.
I do think I was exaggerating about it being the Bloggingheads election, but the site is cooking.
Site is
There's
cooking,
a lot
damn
of stuff there.
We're good, man.
So.
And I do think that we will tip the balance one way or the other. When historians write the story of this election, they'll say that possibly this dialogue made the difference.
I think it's all teetering in the balance. Yes. So anyway.
Speaking of teetering, we're also on Twitter, which sounds kind of like teetering. That's another announcement I should make. That and the comments monoblog. Okay, sorry.
Anyway, next time I should come. I should have worn my Bradley Effect costume. I went to a Halloween party dressed as.
I was going to ask you. You said you went as a Bradley Effect. What did that look like? That costume?
Well, it was like a blue sheet and a red sheet. Okay, and they were came together, and there was a flap, and the flap flaps one way so that it looked like I was mainly blue, and then it flapped the other way in a dramatic reenactment of the Bradley Effect, so it looked like I was mainly red. And under the blue flap, there was a picture of Obama on the front and Tom Bradley on the back. And under the red flap, there was a picture of McCain on the front and George Jugmajian on the back. And 2 people got it, but most people didn't get it because they thought...
I can't believe anybody got that. You hang around with a pretty politically savvy crowd.
They thought that Tom Bradley looked like a small Asian man, which he does in this picture, but it's the best picture I could get. Anyway, it was high concept...
That was good. I never would have thought of that.
And a major conversation starter.
Yeah. Much better than what I went as to my party.
What did you go as?
Bob. And then I put on a mask I found once I was there, and I can send you a picture of that. It's transformative.
Cool.
Okay. Well, it's been real. God bless the United States of America.
Okay, see you after the election.
Okay, bye.